become the latest party to join the Government of National Unity. Out of the 18 parties represented in Parliament, 10 have since signed the Statement of Intent. Together, they represent over 70% of the votes. The ANC says this now concludes the first phase of the GNU initiative. From now on, parties wanting to join will be subjected to clause 24 of the Statement of Intent, which states that the parties in the GNU will have to give consent to any other party wanting to join. The ANC says engagement with members has started on the formation of the executive, and President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to announce his cabinet appointments in the coming days. ATM President Vuyolwethu Zungula now joins us. Vuyo, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Bantu Olomisa yesterday saying that some political parties, whether today or tomorrow in the coming weeks, will also be joining the GNU. Are you one of those political parties?
No, ATM is not joining the GNU.
Okay. ATM is not joining the GNU. Some parties that were part of the Progressive Caucus have now joined the GNU, the UDM, as well as Al Jamas, who've just reported in the PAC. What's your understanding of what's happening here? Why did they leave?
Parties have got different influences and their reasoning why they would want to join the coalition of the ANC. In our view, as those independent parties, they are more than welcome to do what they feel is best for their own parties. But for us as a party, as ATM, we believe that we can't be part of a coalition with the ANC and other parties, precisely because the Statement of Intent is not enough, because what is needed now is that to form government. And to form government, you need to have a clear program of action for the next 5 years. Up until today, the ANC has not provided any clear guidelines on a program of action for the next 5 years. Secondly, it is very clear that besides the Statement of Intent, there are deals that have been signed by the ANC with the Freedom Front Plus, for example, talking about the recognition of Orania. You heard what Helen Zille said about it is not part of the deal to impeach Mr. Ramaphosa on Phala, meaning any party that joins that coalition is indirectly endorsing some of these back-ended deals that have been signed by the ANC with those respective parties. So we can't be part of an arrangement whereby there is a Statement of Intent that is a public document, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of back-end deals that are signed that are not necessarily taking the country forward.
Do you agree that the Progressive Caucus has been weakened, or at least the image that has been created is that the Progressive Caucus is not as strong as it was when the announcement was made?
The Progressive Caucus, it is very strong. One would think that you heard what the MK party said, that it is intending to join the Progressive Caucus. Now, when it was announced, we did not have a party that has 58 seats in Parliament. We now have a party that has got 58 seats in Parliament, and combined, we are over 100 seats in Parliament. And our role as a Progressive Caucus is to do what is constitutionally required to be done by members of opposition parties, which is to hold the government accountable. Because if each and every party joins that coalition, then it means it weakens our democracy, because checks and balances will be weakened because there's no party that will play that role. So the Progressive Caucus now is emboldened, because we are very clear as to who is part of this governing coalition and who is part of the opposition, which is needed in our democracy to hold the executive accountable.
Who's leading the Progressive Caucus? Who's behind it? If a party like the MK party expressed its intention to join the Progressive Caucus, who is the leader of the Progressive Caucus?
As the Progressive Caucus, you'll recall that we met a day before the swearing in of members in Parliament, and we are continuously engaging. There will be meetings that will be held to just take stock of what has happened and how do we move forward as a Progressive Caucus. And I want to remind the viewers that this is nothing new. You'll recall that in many instances in Parliament, what made Parliament to be able to be effective in terms of doing its work it was a collaboration of parties. The Phala thing, it was a collaboration of parties, including the Nkandla issue, including the stopping of the sale of SAA. It was also parties that were collaborating. So the Progressive Caucus is a caucus that does exactly that, which is to collaborate in the best interest of the people. So after we've sat down and we've discussed and we've concluded everything as a caucus, we are going to come back and then announce our position.
Yeah, but currently there is no leader of the Progressive Caucus.
There's no leader of the Progressive Caucus.
How then do you understand, as the ATM, the role that the MK party will be playing in the Progressive Caucus, considering that they have the largest numbers, 58 seats, and also the appointment of the former Judge President of the Western Cape High Court, John Hlophe, who will be the leader of the opposition, official opposition, I guess in this particular case, in Parliament?
Look, Aldrin, in the next few days, we're going to sit down as the Progressive Caucus to discuss the modalities of the caucus in terms of how does it operate, what roles are going to be assigned to the different political parties, or are we going to have a formal structure? The manner in which we are going to operate, that will be discussed and agreed to in a manner of few days. But for now, what is important is to raise consciousness in the citizens to understand the importance of having a caucus in Parliament that will do what the Constitution requires, which is playing the role of an effective opposition, which is to guard against any abuse of power. Because as you stated earlier in the interview, the coalition of the ANC amasses over 70% of the seats in Parliament, which is something that is troublesome. You'll recall how in the past, ANC did abuse its power in terms of protecting Mr. Ramaphosa and bulldozing the opposition when it comes to bills that were submitted. So it needs an effective opposition to guard against any abuse of power by that 70%.
Yeah. Have you thought and reflected on why political parties that are represented in a parliament that are not part of the GNU are not joining the Progressive Caucus, the likes of the NCC? We also have Action SA as well that said that they don't want to be part of it. Mabosa hasn't made an announcement as yet as well.
We will be engaging all parties. You'll recall that when we met initially, we met only a day before the swearing in of members. After we met, we had to go to the swearing in of members. And then after, we had to go to our different constituencies to take stock of the elections in Parliament. So after that, we are going to meet and engage all of the parties in Parliament, because what we are offering as a Progressive Caucus is exactly that, progressive ideas and solutions and work when it comes to the role of Parliament in the 7th administration.
Yeah. Tell us about the work that is expected now that we understand that the structures of Parliament are set to be appointed in this. I understand we're just waiting on the announcement from the President around his cabinet, and then the various committees will then be appointed.
We're going to be very effective. You'll recall that even in the 6th Parliament, ATM alone was very effective as a party. Now imagine where there's going to be a caucus that allows the independence of different political parties, but at the same time takes into account the strength of collaboration when it comes to having a caucus of different parties, whereby when we agree on some issues, we speak in one voice and hold the executive accountable. Also on the policy issues, because it is our belief that we need to have a parliament that is very strong when it comes to lawmaking, and we need to have laws that are a reflection of the will of the people. Therefore, the work of the Progressive Caucus will be exactly that, allow independence of the different political parties because they are representing certain sections of the population in terms of their constituencies, but at the same time collaborate with different political parties to speak in one voice, have a much stronger voice when it comes to the issues that are faced by the nation.
Okay. And now also looking forward at some of the programs of action that will be taking place in Parliament, the position that the Progressive Caucus will be taking, as you say, that you will sit down and have the discussion. But the big announcement that we are still awaiting is that of the cabinet. I don't know from the ATM's perspective, Are there any expectations that you have on your end?
Look, we don't have expectations on cabinet, but would rather, express warning or, caution to South African citizens based on this coalition, because this coalition is based on ideological and policy opposed different political parties. Now, how can you expect a party that is opposing, for example, BEE affirmative action to be part of a government that is pro-BEE and affirmative action? You've got a party that was against the NHI, now is going to be, going to court to challenge the NHI, but at the same time, the same cabinet members is going to go to court to defend the NHI. So what we're most likely to see in this country for the next 5 years, or in fact, for as long as that coalition is intact, is that you are going to see a confusion, a policy confusion whereby the government will not be knowing whether they are coming or going, because it is not formed on the basis of principle. It is not formed on the basis of policy similarities. It is not formed on the basis of achieving a program of action, which is the work of government for the next 5 years. Rather, it is formed just for the ANC to assume power, allocate a few positions of cabinet to different political parties, but nothing about what needs to be done for the betterment of our country. So that is why, in our view, it is a flawed approach, because the best approach here was to decide what needs to be done for the benefit of our people. Once that answer is done, then we look at the different political parties, we look at the similarities, we look at how parties agree on the program of action, and then only come back and say, because there's alignment in terms of policies, in terms of agreement to the program of action, these parties naturally can work together. But once you've got ideological and policy opposed parties, there's going to be chaos.
Okay, and Zizi Kodwa tomorrow being sworn in, corruption accused related to state capture as the ATM. What do you make of that?
It's what the ANC is all about. They speak about renewal. They speak about, cleansing the ANC. But at the same time, they do take people that have been arrested. Some of them, like the sitting president now, has got a cloud hanging over his head on having a report that has been authored by a reputable former Chief Justice, but they still elect him. So the ANC speaks left and walks right. So in our view, South African citizens need to understand the nature of this political party called the ANC, that it is not a party that actually means what it says. It only says things to appease people, but their actions are opposed to what they say.
Thank you so much for your time. That is ATM President Vuyolwethu Zungula. They are also members of the Progressive Caucus, and a number of political parties that were part of the Progressive Caucus have now joined the government of national unity. Still to come here on the AM Report, Andy Mahamba has the latest in the world of sports. Stay tuned.